Over Time, written by me. Hey, it's me. Although my face is flushed with a fever sensation, I get the feeling that you are helping me. My body resents you with the sting passion, but my mind approves of your robust torture. In this pain of distraction, I've yet to realize that you were the definition of darkness during my adolescence. I've yet to realize that you have given me strength with the scar on my flesh. You may have put me on edge, looking over the edge for some time. I did not fall because of time. Thanks, but no thanks. Goodbye, forever, cancer. So that is a poem I wrote when I was a freshman in high school when I was 15 years old. And I had to say that poem in front of the entire class. I was burning red. It looked like I was having a hot flash at the age of 15. And even talking about it today makes me feel uncomfortable. For example, just this past Monday, one of my teachers asked me, "Hey Esther, what have you overcome in your life that you could teach others?" And it was clear to me, I overcame cancer. But for some reason, I couldn't say it out loud in front of people, including myself. So I've been calling myself a cancer survivor just to easily identify myself with what I've gone through. But I've never felt comfortable with calling myself that. Because how about those who didn't survive? What would you call them? They tried their best to survive. And so I was trying to find for a term to identify myself as, and I stumbled upon cancer victim. But that wasn't really it for me because in some way I'm grateful to have cancer because it has taught me a lot about love, life, and a glimpse of who I am today. And so I concluded that I am cancer-free. I am no longer under the grasp of cancer, and I am grateful to have gone through it, but I do not want to go through it again. Thanks, but no thanks. So I was scheduled a surgery to take my adenoids taken out because I just couldn't breathe through my nose as clearly, and I was just a really nasally 7th grader. I just thought I had a lot of boogers up there or something like that. Adenoids are massive lymphatic tissue between the back of the nose and throat. And so after I got them out, I could breathe better, I could talk better, and the biopsy came in, and it came back positive for cancer. These are my PET scans, positron emission tomography scans, which is an imaging test that doctors use to detect any diseases in your body using a special dye with radioactive tracers. Wait, Esther, you're radioactive for some while? Yeah, I was radioactive for some while. And so, yeah, I was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma stage 2 cancer on April 8th, 2015. Instead of going out to see my friends or go to the mall as a 13-year-old, I was crying and yearning to go outside, to even feel like a kid for even a second. And so during this whole thing, I was in a mental state where I could no longer feel for myself. My cancer has stripped me from ever looking towards the future. And I always asked myself, why me? Why was it that I had to go through cancer? Why was it that I had to go through this whole ordeal in my own hospital bed when others were roaming outside? And during this whole thing, my cancer stripped me from my confidence. It stripped me from my emotions. I no longer knew how to feel. And so, just imagine that you are having a wonderful day, soaking up the glistening sun, and all of a sudden, you're in a hospital bed with a tube stuck in your body, just because you have cancer. So this is a glimpse of what it was like to have met cancer as a teenager. And so I had a lot of coping mechanisms as I was going through this whole ordeal. I lashed out on my parents. I slept till the pain was gone, and I watched a lot of Netflix. And let me tell you, I've watched so many TV shows and movies. Thanks, Dad, for that subscription. But these coping mechanisms were toxic to me. I could have made friends in the hospital. I could have been nicer to my parents. I could have exercised. And all these could haves came to me when I overcame cancer. And I told all these things to my dad, and he told me to not have any regrets because I couldn't have done those things anyways, because my body was just so weak. And I remember one time that my body was so weak that I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't go pee by myself. And as a 13-year-old hothead, I always tried to go by myself because I felt guilty of taking time out of the nurses and my dad's time to assist me, even though it's kind of their job. And so one time on my third session of chemotherapy, I went to the bathroom by myself one night, and my dad was just sleeping on the side of my bed, and I was just trying to go by myself with strolling my infusion pump. And I successfully arrived. Your girl peed successfully, but I struggled to stand up. With all my might, I tried to stand back up again, but all dizzy, I started to bump into the infusion pump and bump into the bathroom railing. And I blacked out. And as I was falling, someone caught me in their arms. And I clearly remember thinking, was it my dad? Was it a nurse? Or was it God that was holding me right now because my body has given up? It was my dad. And in a hoarse, panicked tone, he told me, Esther, it's okay. I'm okay. Just wake me up. If I wasn't there for you, I wouldn't have held you in my arms. And just like my dad, my mom, and my brother, they all were there for me with open arms, including the people who cared for me. And just like all of them, they looked up to me as an inspiration, a strong person, a hero. And I kind of started to see myself a little bit like that. With their help, I realized that I didn't have to go through cancer with depression, but with hope. And with hope, that notion of darkness soon started to fade away, and I was excited to meet my friends again and excited to go outside again. And so from then on, I realized that I just could face cancer with hope and that it was just the waiting game. And so I made a poster saying, "My last frickin' chicken day of chemo." And just to motivate myself and remind myself that it was just the waiting game. And so I danced and I smiled in front of my family, my nurses, and doctors. I even drew pictures and wrote letters to my nurses and doctors. Yep. And because of this, I realized that Children's Hospital of Los Angeles was full of children hurting and dying. The least I can do was smile for them. And that notion of death was really not on my mind as a child. I mean, why should it be? A child should be just building blanket forts or going outside instead of taking pills in order to stay alive. And I remember one day, I was just struggling so much. I tried to have that positive outlook, but sometimes just having cancer was just so hard for me. So I didn't take my pills one day. And every morning, afternoon, and night, I would take about 8 pills every time. And during those times, I just had to force myself to eat those pills, and it was just so hard for me. And I thought I was being slick or something, so I just slipped it under my bed. But my mom obviously found out. And I remember her telling my dad and doctors. And I clearly remember thinking, my dad yelled at me because if I did not take those pills, I would die. I remember my mom crying to me that if I did not take those pills, her one and only daughter would die. And I remember my doctors telling me that if I did not take those pills, I would risk my life. So having that hope and trying to have that positive outlook and that I would be cancer-free soon seemed so far away, but I still tried to latch on. And so this brings me today to the present. And just from day to day, I would think about my diffuse large B-cell lymphoma stage 2 cancer. And just as long that name is, my thoughts were as long and as emotionally draining. And so I would always think to myself, whenever I felt a lump in my neck or if I ever felt sick, is this a relapse? Do I have cancer again? I always will have concerns that my cancer may come back again despite my medical reality. And so this led me to always remind myself, hey Esther, just remember that there's always hope. But then from then on, I realized that with hope, I was just more excited to try to go to college and just excited to get a job instead of worrying about what I already overcame. And I will always remind myself that I already overcame cancer. I already kicked its booty. So if it comes again, I will grab it by its booty and kick it again. And so my cancer journey, that it has sprung upon me, I have learned a multitude of things. The life lessons that my cancer has taught me, the person that I've become due to cancer. It has brought me vulnerability. It has brought me pride, purpose. Even though I didn't know that cancer was going to be a part of my future, I just thought that it is my reality now. And so from then on, with cancer being my reality, my cancer was there for me at all times. That I met cancer as a teenager, and I can say now that I am that same teenager who is cancer-free. I am a fighter. I am a booty-kicking girl. I am cancer-free. I am Esther Kim. Thank you.